Hey Jim, Justin Stone with EliteBaseball.tv. The tip of the week this week goes into practice organization, something we are all doing this time of year as we have a few more practices at the early onset of the season, and we're trying to be as efficient as we can in this hour and a half that we may have our kids just once a week. And I revert back to a story on practice efficiency as for my football and baseball background in college. You know, when I was a football player at Eastern Illinois University, we would have long 2.5-hour practices, but every 7 or 9 minutes, a horn went off. And it signified that we were at the end of one period and we were moving on to something else. So maybe over the course of a 2.5-hour practices, and we'd have several of these 9-minute periods roll throughout. No matter if good or bad, that day, we were stopping what we were doing and we were moving on to a new subject. And what this did is it kept practice very fresh. It kept the attention spans of our athletes greater, and we knew if we didn't do something well, that instead of dragging it out for a long period of time, we were just going to hit it the next day or the following days. Then why in baseball, again as a college player, definitely as a college coach, we would find ourselves doing first and third plays for a 45-minute segment, and oftentimes at the end of the 45-minute segment, it was worse than what it was in the first 10 minutes. Because even the attention span of 20 and 21-year-old athletes can't go that long and still maintain focus and discipline in that long of a segment. So my point of this to you, as in our practices, when we organize this, number one, have a plan. Kids like structure and organization. And it only takes a fraction of a minute or two where we have downtime where we've lost them. You capture their attention, practice is going well, and all of a sudden we look at our assistant coach and said, well, what do you think we ought to do next? And you have 4 kids running around in circles and throwing their gloves at each other. You've lost them then for that day once they start giggling and laughing. It's tough to corral them back in. So if we can keep our practices structured the same way, I'm going to give you an example of something that we just did when we were in London working with the London sports group that we do a spring training for. We were introducing some complex things for their travel organization in double cuts that they haven't really done before, bunt defenses that they needed help organizing, and first and third place. Now, all of these, when you're introducing them to young kids for the first time, you can think, okay, it's going to take us a half an hour or an hour to go through each of these individual skills to have them figured out in a team defense concept. And it's exactly the opposite of what I did. What we did is we got this and introduced it as a group in a 10-minute period, and then we attacked it very quickly in our drill segments, going repetition after repetition. And yeah, we would point things out as we needed to constructive criticism of how to execute the play, but at the end of that 10-minute period, I was going on to something else. The point being is we need to revisit it in consecutive days versus bringing it long over one day in a long period of time. The focus is much greater, we hit it more often, and the retention level, you'd be surprised, ends up being much greater as well. We had a lot of success of all the kids understanding where they needed to be, and when we left London and came back to the States, I did tell the coaches, like, they get the concept of how to do a double cut. We had 11-year-olds doing double cuts with correct spacing for the first time. And instead of hitting balls out there and taking the time, we just dropped the balls at the fence, pointed to the ball with the outfielders, they ran to it, middle infielders went to their double cut positions, and we got a ton of reps in 10 minutes, and it took out the bad fungos and the time between that it would take for us to do multiple plays versus just pointing to balls and having players moving all over the field. It was awesome. So just having a plan ahead of time can make your practice time more efficient, and you're going to get a lot more out of it. But I told their coaches, you need to revisit this next time you practice. You need to hit it for 10 minutes in these short spurts, and the retention level is going to be there. Plus, it puts a little bit of the ownership then on the players to talk about amongst themselves what the signals mean, the communication that we have amongst players. And the more times that we do that in those shorter spurts, the better off they're going to be when it comes game time and they have to execute it. So the point of today is have a plan. With the youngest players, have shorter periods of what you're trying to work on in practice versus longer ones. It keeps the attention span very, very close-knit to them, as well as keeps your practices fresh. The one thing I say as a coach that I always love to hear at the end of the practice, and I know I've done my job if I do hear this, at the end of the hour and a half, I hear a kid come up to me and I say, bring it up, and they run up to us, and I start talking about the end of the day, and we're breaking for the end of the day, and they say, we're done already? And I think that is the greatest compliment a coach can have. because we hit them with so many things in a short amount of time. It kept their attention spans. It kept a high energy, high motor practice the kids had fun at, and they learned something. Gone are the days that we're going to have one kid taking batting practice and a ton of kids waiting for them to hit in the field, or waiting for them to field a ball that they may never even get during a live batting practice situation. That's something I'll bring up in a future podcast with Jim, and we'll talk about how we organize batting practice to get maximum swings, as well as timing, and then live game situations where you don't have to have one player hitting and a lot of players standing around on the field. So check that out in a future broadcast. But until next time, this is Justin Stone. Come check us out at EliteBaseball.tv for all these team defensive segments and how to organize them. We have a live telestrator that can show you where players rotate on the field with every different play. We call it our virtual playbook. Until next time, we'll see you on the field.